Hey guys, we're moving on to the chapter on Congress. I'm going to divide this particular lecture into three parts. That way the video is a little bit more manageable to upload. We're basically going to be taking a look at how Congress is organized here today, and we'll be taking a look at the demographics of who is actually in Congress. Okay, so here we go. So when we're talking about Congress, the term you hear all the time is that Congress is a bicameral institution. All that means is it's made up of two parts. They have two very different purposes, the House and the Senate, and we're going to get into that in the either today or in the coming notes. Um, Congress was meant to be a co-equal branch of government with the executive, with the presidency. If you actually read through the Constitution, you'll see that that document gives Congress far more power than it actually gives any president. And so we'll take a look at what those what those powers actually are. All right. In terms of the House of Representatives, what the Constitution has to say about this body and its members. So for the House, you have to be 25, at least 25. You have to be a U.S. citizen for at least 7 years, so you do not need to be a natural born citizen. And you are limited to an unlimited number of 2-year terms, which means that the House is constantly worried about re-election. You've either won an election or you're thinking about your future election coming up. So in any case, on the Senate side, the Senate, you got to be a little bit older. You got to be 30. You have to have been a U.S. citizen for 9 years, and your term is 6 years. And again, an unlimited number of 6-year terms. The Senate was actually intended to slow the process down. Okay, slow the lawmaking process down. This on the slide there, you guys, the saucer quote there. I'm going to talk about that in class whenever that is. It takes too long to tell that story right now, but in any case, the House by design is quicker when it comes to passing legislation. The Senate is usually where legislation goes to die. It just takes far longer. And we'll talk about some of those impediments in future lectures. All right. In terms of who is in Congress, okay, you take a look at the demographics. I mean, for the most part, you guys, it's white men, more so than anything else. If you look at the bar graph there from 538.com, I think this is from earlier this year in 2019. You take a look at the percentage or percentage of Congress members that are women, going from the 101st Congress, 1989, through this current Congress, the 116th, and you'll see that you're talking about roughly 25% of Congress is made up of women. There are different ideas about this. On the one hand, people argue in favor, make the argument that congressional membership needs to represent the descriptive representation of the American public, meaning race, gender, that Congress should look much more like America, that it should be at least 50% female, that you should have far more African Americans and Latinos and East Asians and other ethnic groups than you actually have. And, like I say, that's known as descriptive representation, quote unquote. The other way of looking at this is that people should be much more focused on substantive representation. Okay, substantive, substantive, representation. And the idea basically there is that Congress should represent the policies of the interests of the American people. And so, if you're aiming for descriptive representation, Congress has failed. But if you're aiming for substantive representation, that's when you see, it's much more reflective of the American public. All right. So, like I say, different ways of approaching this idea of representation. Should Congress look like America, or should it represent the interests of the American public, or at least the voting public? All right. So in the House, we talked about a couple of days ago, we talked about single member districts, meaning that each district is represented by a single member of the Constitution, a single member of the House. Those districts, there are 435 of them. There in California, we've got 53, more than anybody else. Those districts are redrawn every 10 years. This is known as redistricting. Now, what you can do when you redistrict is you can draw the district boundaries in such a way so that people in rural districts have much better representation, and people in urban districts or more crowded districts, that their votes count for much less. Okay, this is known as malapportionment. The book talks about it. I'm going to be assigning chapter questions shortly, and essentially what the court decided in 1962 in Baker v. Carr is that malapportionment is unconstitutional, because what it does is it violates the concept of one person, one vote. And so in any case, since Baker v. Carr, districts have to be drawn with roughly equal populations. The second issue when we're talking about redistricting is gerrymandering. And that term gerrymandering, I'm going to send you guys a link to a video in a little bit. Gerrymandering is essentially the process of redrawing districts in order to benefit one group over another. Okay. You take a look at the 4 squares. Okay, there are an even number. I shouldn't say even number. There are the same number of green and the same number of purple dots in each one of those 4 squares. But if you look at the way the districts have been drawn, you get different results. In the top left, they're drawn in such a way that 3 of the 4 districts have a majority green dots, so the Green Party. And only 1 district has the purple. You take a look at the bottom left. Okay, bottom left, we've got a majority of you redrawn it in such a way so that you wind up with 4 districts where the Green Party dominates. Top right, excuse me. You've got 2 districts that are dominant purple and 2 districts that are dominant green. And then you can actually redraw the borders in such a way, bottom right, to where you see 3 purple districts and 1 green district, okay, without actually moving the dots around or without actually moving the voters around. Instead, you'd redraw the districts around them. Okay, so that's gerrymandering, and it's usually done to benefit one political party over another. The court has basically ruled that gerrymandering, for now anyway, is constitutional, is legal. Unless you can prove that you're actually violating the will of the voting public, and the court has set a really high bar for that. Gerrymandering for political party is considered legal, okay, or is considered constitutional. Gerrymandering for race, in order to benefit one group over another, one racial group over another, the court banned that in 1995 in the case Shaw versus Reno, and we're going to talk more about that when we get back to class, if we ever get back to class. And so, like I said, the chapter talks about gerrymandering. It talks about malapportionment and redistricting in greater depth than I've just gone into it. We're sort of at this point now where more of the onus, more of the burden is going to be on you guys to do this on your own. There's very little I can do to force you guys to to do the work at this point. All I can do is put it out there and hope that you guys take advantage of it, and take advantage of the resources, and do the work, do the heavy lifting. All right. Anyway, so I will pick up the second part of these notes at some point in the near future. I'll of course send out a notice via Remind. Thanks for playing along, guys.